Yep, let's do it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Investor Guys podcast. This good-looking gentleman here next to me is Mr. Bill Barnett. How you doing? Good morning, Bill.
Excellent. I'm gonna have to put some sunscreen on so I don't get burned here.
You know what? You had your hat on last time, so we didn't see that there. But yeah, don't get too much sun out there, or too much sand in your flip-flop.
That's right, because the beaches are really incredible here in Fort Worth. So
yeah, that's it. It could be Lake Hubbard, not Fort Worth, but East Dallas. So, how you been?
I've been excellent, brother. Excellent.
Good.
Life's good, just rocking and rolling. Working on getting the new book out, the version 3, the last of the trilogy, and Are You Dumb Enough to Be Rich? It's getting wrapped up.
How's that coming? How's that coming? Because I've been on that journey here for the last couple months myself. So how's that coming along?
I've got the draft completely done. I'm at about 360 pages, and I'm doing the first real edit cleanup on it. And hopefully one's all it'll take. I'll get it once I get this done. Probably take me another week to get this first edit completely done. Then I have a friend that's an editor that I hire, and I'll send it to her, and she'll blow through it in a week or so. And the great thing is she knows how I write. So when I send her stuff, she's not trying. She'll read it. So if the grant, like if I say ain't, she'll stop and reread the sentence and then read it in context and go, oh, no, that's his voice. I'm not going to correct that and make it politically, grammatically correct and take away the voice. We'll leave it in the voice and move on. And so, typically it's just spelling and punctuation grammars.
My biggest thing was the going from informal to formal to informal to formal when I'm telling stories to trying to give actual information. Just it's driving me nuts. So
it's funny that the people that have heard me speak through the years, like you, so when they read the book, I get a lot of texts and emails going, wow, I can hear you saying that as I'm reading it. I don't read it in my voice. I hear it in your voice, but it was just terrific. So, but yeah, so that's the exciting thing that's going on. And it's exciting because we're getting close to getting it wrapped up, and that's always a nice feeling.
And are you going to publish that, or where's that going to be available?
Yeah, I've been with Amicom, which was absorbed by HarperCollins, and they did the first 2 books. I did Royal Press. I left Royal to go with Amicom, and now they've been bought. And so I've got to decide whether I want to stay with HarperCollins or not, or do I want to venture out and self-pub. I've got a couple of offers on that are pretty attractive. We'll just see.
Very good. My book is actually out and available on both Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. It is brain fart.
Kevin Mills Now.
What's that?
Kevin Mills Now.
Multifamily real estate investing and the definitive guide to multifamily real estate investing, and by Kevin Mills. That is on Barnes and Nobles, and it is also on Amazon. It's on a couple of other outlets, I guess I could say, as well. So take a look for that. And I've got another one coming up. We're going to do, I wanted to do Life by the Numbers, because I'm always telling people by the number. But we're going to put it down in the back burner, and I am working on an intro to real estate investing, which will hopefully be available by the end of the year. That's my next project on top of everything else.
And let me just say to everybody that's watching or listening, this guy is brilliant when it comes to real estate. Thanks. Do yourself a favor and pick up a copy.
And if you haven't already read Bill's book, and we talk about it all the time, Are You Dumb Enough to Be Rich? And with a title like that, how can you not pick up that book and read that book? And
make sure you get the second edition. So there's about 25 to 27% different content in the second edition than the first edition. Most people, that are outside that don't know our publishing gigs like you and I do, they see a second edition and they go, "Oh, they just went in and put a new
Cover.
cover on and stuff."
Yeah.
But no, you actually have to have a 25% different content for it to be considered a second edition. Now you can see an updated edition. That's one of those things where they just change a few things, maybe dress the graphics up a little bit and put the book back out. But when you see a second edition or a third edition, it actually has to have 25% new content, and it's treated as a completely separate book. It's given a new
ISBN number.
Yeah, for the Library of Congress, it's given a completely separate listing, and so I would say, pick you up a copy, but get version 2. You can jump on Amazon and grab that, and
so definitely look for that. And we burned up our whole first quarter just about talking about our books, but what we are going to discuss today, and we've been talking about this for months, is subject to, and we've gone over why you would do subject to. We've gone over more or less how you could do subject to in short strokes, because that's a whole weekend boot camp that you would need to really learn, the ins and outs of subject to. Today we wanted to talk about how we find and how we market being able to find these properties that are prime for a subject to deal. Now, you hear us talking about these things, you're like, that sounds great, that sounds awesome. Where do I find them? So we're going to cover some of the ways that we find them, but also ways that we have people come to us and say, hey, I've got a property and I think this might be something that will fit into what you're looking to do. And we'll cover all that, or we'll start covering all that.
You are watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Absolution X, limited editions, lifestyle apparel like none other. Get yours today at absolutionx.com.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
And we're back. Now, just a quick refresher, subject to are going to be properties that we are going to acquire subject to the underlying note staying in place. That means that there's going to be challenges for us to make sure that we don't have a due on sale clause that gets called, and we have a person who's staying on the note who's going to be content and happy to stay on that note while we service that note. Those are challenges that we've talked about before and we'll cover in a different show. That's not what we're going to talk about right now. What we're going to talk about right now is how to attract these homeowners that are in a position that they need us to come in and help them in a situation to where we're going to do subject to. Oftentimes, especially in this market, this is going to be people who are facing foreclosure. They may not have gotten the foreclosure notice already, or they may have gotten the foreclosure notice already. They may be weeks away from somebody knocking on their door and telling them that their property is going to auction. What are some of the ways that you find these properties, Bill, and attract these people to give you a call?
So we do both outbound marketing, which is what you're talking about. How do I reach out so that they know that I do this kind of stuff and would come back and give us a call or shoot us an email or something. And then we do it where we simply do outreach. And that's where we know these people are in this position. And then we'll reach out to them and say, this is what we do, see if there's any interest there, and move forward there. Now, when I'm doing marketing to have people call me, there's certainly you want to have your social media sites and your website reflecting that you buy property. Now, I don't say that I buy property subject to, I simply say that I buy property. And then from there, when we get on the phone with somebody And you may or may not have a person in between you and the seller when you start these conversations. And typically that's what we like to do. We like to have an assistant, and it can even be a virtual assistant. It can be somebody in the Philippines or Mexico or wherever that's a virtual assistant that is going through a very basic, simple script to get some traditional basic information. Gee, what are you wanting for your property? What do you owe on it? How long have you been in it? Why are you selling your property? Just some very non-threatening things like that. And then they'll turn it over to me. I'll go through those. And when I call, then I'm looking at, all right, now I want to get down to what in the office here we refer to the WOW, W-O-W. What's it worth? That's the first W. O stands for O-W-E. And the last W stands for want. What's it worth? What do you owe? What do you want? W-O-W. Wow. And it's always just an easy acronym to remember. This is the important information that I have to have. I can't move forward without that information. So when I'm looking at somebody calling in, when I'm going over these questions with them, so they've gone through the screener, and that's really what I call the person doing our script stuff. There's a screen. They've gone through the screener, and now I'm on the phone with them, and I'm going through those. I'm going through the wow. When we get to O, so what do you owe on the property? And they say, well, so it's a $600,000 property. We owe $530. So will you take what you owe? I mean, that's an instant question. There's no hesitancy. It's just bam. As soon as they tell me the number, so will you take what you owe? Now, 99% of the time, that's a no. The 1% of the time that you get a yes on that, it's typically a home run. So it's takes 4 seconds, 3 seconds to go. So you take what you owe. But what I'm looking for there is also a openness for negotiation. So they may say, and typically what I get is, well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't take what I owe for it, but what do you have in mind? So then we start a different conversation. So I'm looking at, so social media, website, those are the most obvious. We still do bandit signs, and we do those because they work. It is old school, but it works. And it is nothing fancy. It's we buy houses, cash, fast, phone number, that's it. Those signs, I wish I could tell you, Kev, that I came up with these incredible, those signs have been around for 60, 70 years. And we put those out in intersections. And do I put them out? No, I don't put even one of them out. No. So if you'll pay attention in your neighborhoods, when new subdivisions are being built, you'll see directional signs from all the different builders in that subdivision in the blocks outside the subdivision, pushing people toward the subdivision. If you'll go over on Friday afternoon, and typically like here in Texas is around 3 o'clock. So I'll try to go into around those subdivisions around 2 or 2:30. And I'm looking for the truck coming by putting the signs out because it's against the law, at least here and in most counties around the country. It's against the law to have those signs out anytime before 3 o'clock on Friday, and they have to be picked up by midnight on Sunday. So what I do is I pay a service to do that. And it's the same service the builders use. They're just not in, the yellow pages. You can't hop on Google and go sign putter outer companies. There's no response to that. But you can look at, that's how we get our signs put out. We're paying about $4 a round trip, which means for every sign that goes out, they charge us $4. That covers them putting the sign out, then going back and picking it up. And typically the services that I use require 100 at a time. They won't do less than 100. And then you just sit down with them when you deliver the signs and say, okay, they'll say, this is currently our route. Where do you want to be? And you pick it out. But, you'll get, on an average weekend, we'll get 15, maybe 20 calls. And out of that, there's typically a deal somewhere in. If I get 20, there's a deal in there. And that's just off the signage.
Yeah. And a quick note, if you're going to do signs, especially if you're doing 100 of them, don't write each one of them out. on paper. Have them printed, make them look professional, have them mounted on foam core. Otherwise, you're going to be flopping around in the wind and falling apart in the rain and everything else. Have them printed, professionally printed, mounted on foam core. I would even put holes in the top of them so that they don't have to put holes into them when they're mounting them to whatever they're mounting them to.
Yeah, and usually we do the corrugated plastic.
Yeah, that's like a foam core. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you get the little H, looks like a goal post, or get an H metal frame, and it just pops down on there. They pop them out. Now, one of the companies that I use requires that you use their sign frames, which is basically just a real estate sign frame. It's a heavy duty frame, and you can literally drop the sign down in the middle of it, and it fits on their trailer. They have a trailer built that'll hold probably 1,500 of these things. And so it just depends on the company, but you're going to spend $3, $4, $5 per sign. But much better that they do that, because look, the first time I did this, I was going to do it myself, and I had
It sucks.
I had a trunk full of signs. Which, by the way, a trunk full is only about 20. You know, I had gone to Home Depot, had bought tomato stakes, gotten my signs, I'd beat them all down. And after I put out about 5 or 6 of them, I'm like, this is not the way to do this.
Yeah.
And I know we're way over on break here.
We are. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
You are watching the Investor Guys podcast.
The Investor Guys podcast will be back shortly. Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at CaymanK.com.
Absolution X. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Limited editions. Unique, exclusive designs. Seek your absolution. Get yours. Only at absolutionx.com.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
The Investor Guys podcast will be back shortly.
And we are back with our third and final segment of Investor Guys podcast. And we're going to talk about a couple of services actually just before we went off, and go ahead and jump into that real quick.
So there's a couple of programs that I use. They've been around a while. They're really great for investors. They're not very expensive. One of them is PropStream, Property Stream, shortened up PropStream. Damian Zamora built that company, sold it off years ago. Was living all of our dreams. Sold it for a very nice profit. Moved on to the beach in Cabo. He's been in Cabo for about 10 years, literally on the water. And I Zoom and FaceTime with David fairly regularly, so I get a little live beach action. So PropStream is a great service, or it's just a computer program that's online, so you're always getting live data. And I also use one called Dealmaker Pro. And so both of those, I personally prefer PropStream for finding subject to deals, because when you look up a property, one, you can literally search by, I want properties that are in default and they have to have X amount of equity. And so when you filter that way, the program itself will go in and say, okay, in Fort Worth, here's all these properties that are for sale. Now, here's all of them that are, by the way, cross-referenced and they're in default. And here's what the default amount, here's what they say the balance is. And at the same time, it checks to see what the CMA is on the comps on it. And it'll say, okay, so there's 60,000 in equity. Typically 100 is what I look at. I don't want to be searching for anything in subject to that doesn't have 100,000 in equity in it. Now, by the same token, sometimes I'll look at $10,000 or less in equity. So yesterday we structured a deal on a property where one of my students had called and said, "Hey, I think this works." And we started looking at, they're up in the Tacoma, Seattle area. And so we looked at the property and we went through PropStream, looked at it, and I said, "Guys, they have like no equity. They bought the house a year ago. So now it's a couple that's splitting up and they're ready to they just want out. So they've had it on the market, but because they have no equity and it's a brand new house, there's still new construction going on in their subdivision." And I said, "So here's the deal. The only way this makes any sense for us is if we buy it subject to. And we're going to be selling against builders. So we're going to have something that maybe they're not offering right now." Well, this particular, and this is one of the great things about subject to, is the debt that you are servicing. Remember, you're servicing, not assuming. The debt that I'm servicing is typically at a significantly lower rate than what today's rates are. So this was a 2.9 30-year fix. I'm like, okay, so we can come in and we can market that property with seller financing. We're going to sell it subject to anyway, but with seller financing, and we're going to wrap that, and we're probably going to charge 6%, maybe 5%. But because you're offering seller financing, a couple of things happen. One is you are able to premium price the property. Any appraiser will tell you this, that a property that has seller financing is more valuable than the exact same house next door to it that is only available through conventional or FHA, because that seller finance property is available to more of the buying market. So it's a more valuable property. And typically that value is assessed at 10% to the market. So if I'm selling a $500,000 house, I can sell it with seller financing for $550,000. So when I go in and pick up this property subject to, and this is what, and by the way, this deal got accepted. Went back, they were 3 months behind, which in $2,200 payment. They were not big money behind, but they stopped making their mortgage payment when they filed for divorce. And they do not want to have, there's no equity there. They got in at 3.5%. I said, they said, "What about our down payment?" I'm like, "You paid 3.5% down. That's, it's not even a point of discussion." They're like, "Oh, okay, just thought we'd ask." It was like, fine. So we're picking up the property. We're giving them $3,000 to move. By the way, they're already out of the house, but we're giving them $3,000. Then we're servicing the debt for the next 5 years. We can go out anytime, but there's a balloon in it that says we have to be out by the end of the 5th year. And then we are paying them $200 more than what their payment is. And that puts them in a position, first of all, we just saved their credit, so foreclosure is not going to be on their credit report. And for anybody that doesn't know this, foreclosure is worse on your credit than bankruptcy. You're better off with a bankruptcy than a foreclosure. Okay, so we saved them from having foreclosure on their credit report. Now they're making $200 a month, which puts them in a position where whoever is the heavyweight in this relationship, because when it splits up, there was one side of that marriage that delivered more credit and more income. And so whoever that was, when they're buying their next property, they're going to be able to show, hey, you know what? I got an extra $200 a month coming in over this transaction I did here. I have an asset that's producing income. So it actually puts them in better position to be able to purchase their next property. And then what we're looking at is we're only paying the balance, not much less than what they paid for the property, because that first year you get almost zero equity. And they only pay 3.5% down. But there'll be a little, we get that equity. it's going to be about 10 grand. So, but yeah, fun stuff. And these kind of deals are going to be out there in droves as we go forward, because more and more people will be doing this based on the Biden economy. They'll be walking away from their property, and they need people like us to come in and save their credit.
Absolutely. And we're up on our time limit, but when we do our next show, we're going to talk about actual marketing that we can do that is going to attract these homeowners to us, where they're going to be picking up the phone or sending us an email and saying, hey, I think I've got a property that fits the criteria that you're looking for. Let's talk. We'll do that on our next show. Right now, let's let you guys get out of here and get back to investing. Remember, if you don't get started, you're never going to be an investor. You're never going to have those paychecks. You're never going to be experiencing all the things that Bill and I are talking about. So if you haven't already started, get out there, get off your butt, get it done. If you're already doing it, keep up the good work. We will see you back here on the next Investor Guys podcast. Bill, I'll see you later.
Everybody. You too, brother. Look forward to it.